I logged in to make this video, and the first thing I read from World Chat is, how do you bypass a slur? This is why World Chat is the best thing and the biggest mistake when it comes to any online game. And you know what? I'm keeping that part in the video. What is going on, my fellow weebs? Chrono here, and welcome back to the channel. So it has been a very long time since we started all of this. Since I brought you guys my very first video on my Berserker, sitting in this exact same chair from the same angle, mind you. I believe the first video was just like tips, and then like the next one was kind of going over my skill build and things like that. And a lot of you guys came to the channel specifically because of those videos, and I appreciate those of you guys who stuck around. Now, tomorrow, Assassin releases. And I know a lot of people thought I quit playing this game because I hadn't, made videos about everything along those lines. But the reality is that I didn't really have any videos that I felt like were worth making that wouldn't just be throwing, oh, I just did this piece of content at you. I like my videos to be informative. I like them to help teach things. I like to learn from them as well. I like sharing information with you guys. So that's just the type of videos that we make. And as Assassin's going to be something that we switch over to, primarily going to be maining Spectre and then having Mirage as an alt, I wanted to go ahead and do just a finalized wrap up on everything I learned about Berserker in Crystal of Atlan. Now, keep in mind, this is going to be ever growing and ever changing. Metas develop, things change, and they work differently from the CN servers. We've had access to things at different time frames, so take anything I say with a huge grain of salt. We're going to be looking at some of the top ranked players and the crazy things I'm seeing them do, some of the different things I've seen other players do, and so on and so forth. And I'm going to explain to you guys everything from just the basic understanding of the attributes to the overall skill build that we go for and some changes that you can opt to go into, down to the gear that you want to prioritize, your upgrade path, so on, as well as circuits and insignias. This is going to be a very long video. I highly recommend you toss this on in the background as you're doing something else, maybe as you're grinding away in Crystal of Atlan, or maybe you're working on some other game that you're playing, because we have a lot to say here today. So without further ado, let's get started in what's likely to be my final update video when it comes to Berserker in Crystal of Atlan. Can we just say that, man, this hairstyle is dope. I mean, the outfit's okay too. I'm a fan of the beach fit, but this hairstyle is so good. So to start things off, this is my Berserker, kind of where he's at, 52k power. Nothing else really matters past like 5k nullification. This is the gear he's currently rocking. This is not correct. We're going to talk about exactly where I would go with this and how I would adjust this. But since I knew I was switching to Assassin, I did very minimal changes to anything over the last probably 2 months, realistically, with this character. But we're going to go over just first and foremost the skills, the stats that we're going for. So Berserker is a physical DPS or a physical attacker. I feel like the term DPS is like everyone, technically speaking, except for like one class, but we'll just go ahead and say it. It's a physical DPS primarily, though you do lean into pyro specifically. You'll find a lot of classes lean a specific way with their elements. Some will just go for anything just to get the actual elemental damage bonus. In the case of Berserker, because of a specific ring that we have that gives us extra damage on Blade of Annihilation and pyro enhancement with it, we lean to fire because nothing else really it messes around with like what we want to go for. So fire is where we lean in this situation. Of stats, our important stats, of course, strength is our primary stat as it affects our physical attack. Intelligence is a dead stat for us. Agility affects our physical defense and our physical crit. Spirit affects our magic defense and our magic crit. We're not really trying to scale magic defense. You don't really scale defensive stats. You just kind of get them along with the offensive stats you're going for. So not really paying attention to it. And physique. Physique is our HP, and this is actually pretty important. We do scale off of HP because of a skill that we have that we'll talk about later called Frenzy. The more HP we have, the more bonus we can actually get for bonus damage. So we do want to have a good amount of HP. We are at a pretty comfortable amount at the moment. We'll get the most out of all of our gear at the very least, not necessarily all of the stat that we have available to us though. We had a solid 225k HP. We have 9k physical attack. Attack doesn't really matter. We have physical and defense shred about 2097. These of course are very useful because we do want shred. This is going to come from our gear, so we do like to see that. Physical magic defense, not really concerned about it. Physical and magic damage reduction, again, not concerned about it. Physical crit and critical damage. Now, this stats could be way better if I actually invested in my gear more. We got 77 crit rate and 143 crit damage. Ideally, where you want to start is getting yourself up to around 60% crit rate, and then a 1-to-2 ratio roughly is what you're looking for. You want more crit damage, of course, than crit rate. The reason for it is because you are just sources that give you crit damage tend to be higher than crit rate, and crit rate doesn't really scale any higher than 100%. I know people are probably talking, oh, but the cavalry set, or yeah, the chariot set, we'll talk about that, but realistically, you still want more crit damage than crit rate. That's just long and short of it. So offensive stat crit damage, offensive stat physical crit rate. Magic crit rate does not matter for us. Movement speed is nice to have, but we're not really focused on it. You will find out that you will get quite a bit of movement speed just because of the gear we're going to go after. Attack speed is not going to be very high. It is technically considered an offensive stat for us, but we do actively lower our attack speed. So while it is okay to have, you're going to really have it pretty low on the totem pole of offensive stats you really want to look at. Cooldown rate or CD rate can be much, much higher. I think it kind of like, I won't say caps off, but it has like a soft cap of like 350-ish. Some classes just get a ton more of it in their gear. Berserker doesn't really get a bunch of it in their gear, at least not the gear that I'm rocking at the moment, but you'll find out when we take a look at rankings and looking at gear, you'll find players have a lot more cooldown rate, and it's actually very useful for them. For elemental, you want to go for pyro. Pyro is going to be our primary source of damage. The reason for it is because you get elemental damage bonuses by doing elemental damage to begin with. You're going to get this stat regardless from part of your gear somewhere. Every character gets it. In the case here, we don't get this extra 30% damage unless our attacks are pyro. So we're actually going to opt into using a specific food. We already have the insignia that does it, but we're going to opt into using an insignia and food and things like that to transfer our damage over to pyro. That way we can take advantage of this stat here. Without it, without transferring our damage to pyro, we don't get it, and you get the extra 30% on everything that we do. And we really do want that. And basically every class kind of wants that. Every class is different though. For example, warlocks want umbral. If I remember correctly, bounty hunters wanted electro, but like people are kind of all over the place with this. So it just depends on what your actual stats are and what you actually get. And then the rest is kind of, the rest are pretty self-explanatory. This is probably the primary stuff I wanted to talk about, which is your basic stats. So from there, I actually wanted to talk about skills and the skill tree itself. And I've made a video talking about the entire skill tree, and you can kind of play around with this a little bit, but most players kind of fall into one specific setup or one specific build that they're really, really pushing as high as possible to do the most amount of damage they can do. So to start things off, the only thing you're really keeping from the top of your tree is Crushing Blow, and it's mostly just another button to press and a way to kind of get up to your target as you're doing other things. There's not really anything else that's all that useful. I mean, there's this chains and there's this uppercut, but they're not really all that good. This is going to give you like, you know, some distance that you can move. It does a bit of damage. It also allows for some repositioning. Let's say you're in the air, you need to get to the ground for certain abilities that do a little bit more damage while you're on the ground. We're going to talk about that in a moment here too. But you definitely want to use this over pretty much anything else. You really don't need to worry about agile. While it does give you some distance, it's not going to really be the end of the world. And with the build you're going to be going for, you're not really going to need this extra distance. So not really a big deal. Sword oil for physical attack, shouldn't really have to explain this to you. This is for special recovery, don't have to explain this to you. Channel Berserk Blade. So Channel Berserk Blade, the way this actually works is you are going to charge your ability. You can see it on screen here. As soon as the charge finishes, you do this whole attack into a slam overhead. Now, there's a bit of debate on how you should be using Channel Berserk Blade, but after testing it over and over and over and over again and getting the same result, I can tell you pretty definitively that Channel Berserk Blade does more damage if you charge it while on the ground. Not just more damage, more DPS overall. Primarily, especially because you also have the added extra damage you're getting from your 5-piece set of the Berserker Destiny gear or your class specific or class exclusive gear. We're going to talk about your actual setup for that, but the TLDR is if you can be on the ground, channel this fully and land it completely, it is worth doing. However, if you're in a situation where there's a possibility that you could miss, you have to get damage out very quickly, doing this in the air will remove its charge, and it will also remove the downward smash that you have. Like, you'll still do the ability, but the downward smash where the earthquake also happens because of your set of gear will not happen. Because of that, you do lose some damage. However, you gain DPS technically because it is a faster ability. You do not have any charge. So where you lose damage for being on the ground, you gain DPS. So it basically evens itself out more or less. You do eke out a little bit more damage by charging it, but if you're not going to land it, it's better to just use it aerially and keep on moving with your actual rotation overall. And in some situations, it can actually be a damage bonus or damage gain if you're able to fit in abilities you wouldn't have otherwise if there was a short damage window that you had available to you. So basically, if you're not sure, just use this in the air. It's faster and you're not really losing much damage overall. Like, it's within a percent, if even that, in most situations. I shouldn't have to explain emergency dodge. Let me explain the charged basic attack really quick situation. So with charged basic attack, you're able to do a thing where you can actually do what's called a triple jump by holding your charged basic attack and jumping a specific way. You can, get your actual charge attack and your double jump off, which allows you to get really, really high. In some cases, you deal with certain mechanics. In other cases, you can skip specific things, and a lot of top end players like to use it. I personally found it to be very clunky and annoying. And by unticking this, what you're actually able to do is hold your basic attack, which allows you to attack immediately as quickly as you possibly can, which does equal out a little bit extra DPS, like a very small amount, but mostly it's just comfortable to me. So it's up to you how you like to go about it. I don't like spamming my mouse button personally. I just hold the button down and I can get my basic attacks out as quickly as I possibly can, but it's up to what you decide at the end of the day. It is some utility that you're losing if you actually opt to not take this. And it doesn't cost any points. You just untick it if you don't want to use it. I personally don't. Moving on, we have Frenzy. So Frenzy is a bit of a weird mechanic that I wish I could tell you I fully understand exactly how it works and the exact numbers, but they don't really add up the way I feel like they are supposed to. So I'm going to tell you how the skill works and what's important about it. So Frenzy. What Frenzy does is for every 10% of max HP lost, damage multiplier plus 1%, and damage multiplier plus 1% for every 200k HP lost. Both effects can be stacked with a maximum increase of 25%. Now, to show this, I need to go ahead and hop over to the training room, so give me just a moment. So here we are in the training hall, and as you can see, I have full HP and I have a bonus of 12%. Now, from the moment I got this skill, this is where this was actually at. So it's a little bit confusing exactly how it works because as you see, I'm not missing any HP, nor do I have any maximum HP down, but I have that bonus anyway. And if I were to go in here and I were to, let's say, unskill Frenzy, so we can just go ahead and, okay, hold on. Is Frenzy a basic one? Why did I feel like you could unskill this before? Maybe I couldn't. I've recorded this video multiple times. You'll have to forgive me. But, oh, it's the okay, no, it was the Crimson Bear I was thinking of, my mistake. But anyway, once you get the skill itself, the way this works out is you're able to get that extra damage multiplier. You're probably thinking, oh, but like how does this work out? I mean, it's maximum 25%, so on and so forth. I'm actually going to skill something really quick here. We're going to talk about it here in just a moment. But it allows you to get a damage bonus based on the amount of HP you've lost. And then there's, of course, the damage bonus you already have, which is 12%. Now, I don't believe I can show this off without having this other skill ticked. So let's talk about this as well really quick. So Stout. No, that's the agility one. See, all these skills look very similar. I believe it's Rage Fire. Yeah, here it is. It's Rage Fire. Hate mixing up these skills and they put these abilities this sort of way, but it is what it is. No big deal. But Rage Fire. So upon casting skills or reviving, HP is reduced to a certain percentage with the deduction HP fully converted into a Crimson Barrier that blocks damage. The TLDR is when you cast a skill, you chunk your HP down to 10%. You have a 90% block barrier of it in front of you instead. So I'm going to go ahead and use a skill. And as you can see, if you look at my HP bar is all the way down. And you can see I have a 25% bonus here. Actually, I have a 26% bonus here, which is where things get a little confusing because it says a maximum bonus of 25%. I don't know this is because of bonuses that have changed and updates that they've made in the past, but I've looked through this tree. I've looked through every single piece of gear. I have double checked everything that could possibly make any sort of effect on this. This just goes past what they said specifically. It doesn't go to 25%, or it doesn't stop at that percentage. It keeps going up based on the amount of HP that you're losing. What I think this is supposed to try to say in this situation is the 1% modifier continues all the way up to 25%, and then this can continue past this. So the more HP you get, the more you're actually going to generate overall. So I don't know if it's like one and not the other or whatever it's supposed to be exactly. It's a very strange situation, but it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is essentially the more HP you have, granted you don't want to give up some of the other important stats, but the more HP you have, the bigger damage bonus that you gain. Let me go ahead and shut this off because it's really annoying. There we go. And then reset. Cool. The more HP you have, the bigger damage bonus that you gain. That's pretty much all you really care about when it comes down to Frenzy. Frenzy is pretty dope in that situation, right? Moving on, we have Stout. Stout just reduces our agility, or reduces our attack speed, basically, for a higher damage. So do a bit more damage, but we attack a bit slower. No big deal there. It's weird because it says sacrifices some agility for higher damage, which, like we went over earlier in our stats, it doesn't actually touch our agility. It's just talking about our attack speed. So don't be confused about that. Moving on, where were we at? So we talked about Stout. We have Earthquake. Earthquake kind of serves the same function realistically that Crushing Blow does. It's just stronger. So it allows us to kind of move towards our target to get some good damage in. It allows you to reposition if you're in the air and you want to get to the ground very quickly without having to, let's say, let go of a button and let your character fall. Or if you're like me and you don't have charge basic attack, slotted, you can normally just hold a charge basic and you'll slam to the ground. But if you don't have that slotted, then you can use something like this instead. And as we have 2 of these and they're really, really short cooldowns, I find myself not really needing to charge basic attack to get to the ground in most situations. So that's pretty much it. Moving on, we have probably one of our strongest skills that we have and something that we actually do put a lot into is Condemnation Siphon. You stab the ground, it pulls enemies and it does damage. That's pretty much the TLDR of it. It's actually very strong. It's really good AoE and it's also really decent single target as well. Moving on, we have Savage Fury. You move towards the target, you slash a couple of times. Pretty straightforward, nothing really to talk about here. It has some interactions with a couple pieces of gear that we're going to use, but that's pretty much it. Moving on, we have Rage Fire. We just talked about it. It gives us our shield. This shield blocks incoming damage for us. Basically, it turns our heal or our HP into a shield as being our resource for health. It works mostly the same. And because of the skill we have here, Conversion, any healing that we received gets turned into the shield. So it essentially works exactly the same, which is kind of nice. Moving past, we have Crimson Cross. So Crimson Cross is another one of those skills that works similar to Channeled Berserk Blade. If you cast it on the ground, it's a bit slower and it's multiple hits, up to 15. If you cast it in the air, it's faster and it's only 1 instance of damage. Now, which one of these is better? Which one is worse? Technically speaking, casting it in the air is faster and will equate to being a bit more DPS. However, if you factor in critting, you have more chances to crit with 15 hits than with 1 big hit. Granted, if your 1 big hit crits, then everything, that's essentially like all 15 hits critting. So it depends on how much crit you actually have. The more crit you have, I would gamble more on doing the air version of the skill than doing the grounded version. But you can also just go with whichever one is just convenient for you at the time. You don't need to cut your combo or stop to jump like short hop into an aerial attack, because any time that you would have saved by doing that, you've now lost by jumping. So just know that it's still useful no matter if you're in the air or on the ground. Realistically speaking, this game is substantially safer while you're in the air. So it's one of those situations where it's not going to be the end of the world if you have to, cast this while aerial. Army Breaker, you would think Spin to Win is like really good AoE for us. You wouldn't use it in single target, but it's just really good damage because of a skill we have or a piece of gear we're going to have. It just does really solid single target damage. So we use this probably for AoE, but even for single target as well. It's just very, very strong. And now here's a skill that I feel like I made a PSA about this, and I feel really dumb because I got this wrong for a really, really long time. But Unyielding Madness. So how Unyielding Madness works is when receiving fatal damage, you enter a near-death state. HP is fixed at 1, and you gain Leech. All damage and healing will be calculated after 10 seconds. Basically how this works is you hit 1 HP, you then attack your target because you'll stop at 1 HP, you'll have Leech. You attack your target and you heal that HP back. Not immediately, but over 10 seconds, they calculate how much damage you've dealt. And it's not exactly specifically stated this way, but what I have found in the way that it actually works through testing, whether it be in PvP or PvE, is you still take incoming damage. If you deal more damage than you take, you heal out the damage that you took. But if you take more damage than you actually are able to heal, at the end of that 10 seconds, you will still die. So you need to be very, very careful to ensure that you do enough damage to actually gain the benefit of the Leech of the Near Death. It's at a 2-minute cooldown, which seems kind of crazy overpowered, right? Until you read the second half of this. So when this passive is not learned, gain an extra 8% frenzy damage bonus that can exceed the upper limit. Well, we already know that we've kind of exceeded the upper limit unless the upper limit isn't explained properly in frenzy here as it is. So by having this ticked, you'll find is our max right now is 26, right? If I untick this skill, oh, wrong thing. If we go in and untick this skill, so we go into skills, we untick this, max is now 38, which is a lot more than 8%, by the way, which is why I feel like frenzy isn't properly explained in this game. It's very strange, but at the end of the day, it still works exactly the way that you want it to. The more HP you have, the more bonus you get. So this skill seems like it's crazy overpowered, but it's balanced by you're going to lose out on damage. And Berserker is not that big of a damage like champion. It's very strong, don't get me wrong, but it's not like one of the major heavy hitters in the game. So you do not want to give up on that damage just because you are getting, more survivability. Now, we do have a scheduled buff tomorrow for Frenzy. Frenzy is going to get buffed up a little bit more. We're going to get better scaling with it. So it is going to do a bit more damage overall. But keep in mind that you do want to make sure you're still getting taking advantage of as much damage you possibly can while you're playing Berserker, because that is primarily your goal. I shouldn't have to explain this to you. Hell's Destruction just does big damage. Its damage is based on how much HP, I think, is what Berserk Blade has. Oh no, this is just the big damage hit. Okay, I think this other one has the HP accumulation. So this one is just big damage hit. Berserker's attacks are really slow. So make sure that you use this in a situation where you know it's going to hit, because you have like initial like roar that you do or whatever that hits the target, and then the overhead slam of the sword, which has some pretty decent range on it, but you really don't want to be far away when you use this. So just be careful that you don't whiff. Further down, we have Battle Thirsty, which is going to reduce the cooldown of Combination Siphon, Savage Fury, Crimson Cross, and Army Breaker. Interesting. All skills that we use. Wonder why. And then, of course, Surge, which is the upgrade for Combination Siphon, pulls enemies in for you, and it has like a blade that discharges the ground. I don't know if I mentioned this during Combination Siphon, and I probably skipped it, but the skill does more damage while on the ground, however, is faster while in the air. So it's another one of those skills that, like, technically you can use on the ground or in the air, but realistically, at the end of the day, the DPS is going to be about the same. So if you absolutely need to use this skill while you're in the air, you're fine to use it. But ideally, you want to use it while you're on the ground, but you don't want to set yourself up to be on the ground specifically to use it and lose damage. For example, if I was in the air attacking a bunch, a target got knocked down, this Combination Siphon is about to come off cooldown, and I know for a fact I have a Crushing Blow, I'm likely to go ahead and press Crushing Blow to get myself to the ground, to then use the grounded skills in that situation without having to skip a beat, is basically the idea here. Blade of Annihilation does damage. There's not really any other way to explain it. It's a skill that we have. Some of our gear is actually going to make even stronger. This is the skill that gets transitioned over to Fire Element or Pyro Element, and gets a Pyro Element enhancement when you use it. So that's why we are Pyro in the first place, which comes from a ring. But yeah, this is just a good skill. You definitely want to use it. And last but not least, we have Final Cataclysm. I hate this skill so very much. It takes an absolute metric ton of time for it to actually land. It's like you jump in the air, you do like this really slow, like if you watch the actual skill showed here, that's how long it actually takes for it to land before you deal. And you don't do anything, no damage, finally do damage. So it's really annoying. It takes a long time for it to land. If you jump, technically it'll land a bit faster, but you do have to jump. So if you're already in the air, it's not a bad idea to do this, but don't do this if you're too high in the air. What I found in a lot of situations is if your initial target either dies or you hit it very awkwardly while you're too high in the air, it doesn't register properly, and it just does one hit, like a slap, and then it stops. From what I've seen, that is catastrophic, and it does not do the amount of damage it's supposed to do. It's based off of your HP as well. The lower your Berserker's current HP is, the more Fury they can release at once, dealing devastating damage. Then it shows physical damage based on HP loss, and then shows you the amounts, whatever, right? So if you are like, you happen to be lower than your 10%, technically this will do a little bit more damage, which also will affect your Frenzy as well if you're lower than your 10%, because sometimes that has happened, but it's not something that you can really plan for. And that's basically it for the actual overall skill build. Realistically speaking, it's not too complicated. There are a couple of like honorable mentions in some situations. For something like Queen, I would drop this this ultimate here, Hell's Destruction, and actually take Crimson Assault instead, just because it's faster and it'll be easier for me to deal with my my little pawn pieces as I'm going through the fight. It's just really quick, and you're not really losing much damage. Some people opt to drop freaking Hell's or Final Cataclysm, keep Hell's Destruction as you get a cooldown on Hell's Destruction, or cooldown reduction on Hell's Destruction anyway, and do that along with, you know, Crimson Assault, because then they have their ults up more often. But it's kind of up to you how you want to go about this. I have seen some cases for using Sword Tornado in PvP and in some specific PvE situations for AoE for very quick attacks. It is a very quick attack, so it's nice to have in that situation, but it's not anything that I've continuously used for any way, shape, or form. There's also Reap. Reap is actually pretty solid. It eliminates targets at 25% HP. This is very useful in something like Tempered Trials, where you're trying to take out a target that might be fairly beefy for your current level. So it's going to eliminate them, and they hit 25% HP if you use the skill on them, which is going to be really strong for you. So I definitely recommend picking it up if you are in that specific situation in like Tempered Trials or something along those lines. And that's basically it. Everything else is more or less useless. Blade Anchor, I have not found a single reason to go back to ever. And Upward Slash, again, no reason to go back to ever. I thought Annihilation would be really good, but it's just way too long of a channel and way too slow, and the damage just is not high enough to even consider going for it. So Annihilation plus Sunder is not something that we use in PvE at the very least. I do believe it is a PvP skill, because you do also have the delay and slow that you inflict on your target when you use Annihilation on them. So Pretty solid stuff there. And then of course, like I mentioned before, on Free Unyielding Madness, you pick that up whenever you need to survive. Like let's say, for example, it's the first time you're going into a legend difficulty piece of or a legend difficulty piece of content. Maybe you might want to go ahead and take something like Unyielding Madness. That way you can survive a bit longer and understand mechanics a bit better. Or maybe there's like some strategy where you sacking might actually help out, and you can use that to technically avoid the sack while also still completing that process for your team. So that's pretty much it when it comes to the skill build. And if you're curious of my layout, this is how I have things laid out. Of course, I have, this is my right mouse buttons, R&B, obviously. So I have my 2 abilities that I use for either jumping to my target or, slamming down. We have our 2 AoEs listed here for me, kind of a gap closer and like a starter here. And again, just 2 skills that are fairly quick. So I know most people have different setups for these. If you actually take a look at the rankings, so we can, I gotta actually get out of here to take a look at the rankings. That's so annoying. So if we take a look at the rankings, we go over Golden Fleece, we can take a look at the Berserkers. We'll look at Ori. We can use Ori as an example. Someone from our, from my guild. So take a look at his skills. You'll find he has all the same skills, but in different places. So, and this is like his main setup that he's got. You can do this for basically any class. You can take a look at whoever's playing them. You'll find, if I take a look at Tony, I believe he also has the same setup. PvE wise, he actually is taking Annihilation, which is interesting. I'm actually very surprised about that. He might have opted to go Annihilation instead, which is a weird decision. I don't know. Maybe he knows something I don't. But Ori did actually eke him out as far as damage goes, so I'm going to take the other idea. And I've never seen anyone go for Annihilation anyway. Take a look at Darren. Take a look at skills, and then, yeah. Same situation. So it's basically more or less the same thing when it comes down to it. And you can always use that as a way to maybe learn something about some of the players on your server as well. So moving on, we're going to talk about gear. Gear is a very, very funny situation because it is currently evolving. As we recently got a new piece of content that's allowing us to get back to our accessories. It was in a very weird spot for a while where you saw some Berserkers taking almost virtually no Berserker gear, actually, which felt really, really weird to see. But the thing is our set bonus is both kind of good and terrible at the same time. When I talk about our set bonus, I'm talking about our class exclusive set bonus. So we're going to talk about gear first here because it's honestly just the fun part to talk about. But what you have when you look at each piece of individual class, you know what? I'll just look at it from the crafted menu because I can look at everything. What you have when you're looking at the class specific gear is you have a set bonus and you have an individual, like 2 individual things that your piece of gear does, right? Which has like 2 effects. In this case, the helmet has Army Breaker gets +1 level, and then performing an extreme dodge will restore some HP. And then you have the actual set bonus, which we have the 2-piece set bonus, +1 level to active skills between level 1 and 35. And when your HP percentage is lower than the target's damage skill damage is increased by 15%. Now, we do push our HP to 10%. So as long as our target is above 10% HP, we get 15% increased skill damage. It's okay. It's not great, but it could be better. And we'll talk about how. We also have a 4-piece set bonus. So damage during resonance is increased by 3.6%. And we get +1 level to Hell's Destruction, one of our ultimates. Pretty solid. Not terrible. And we also have Ironclad Punishment. While protected by a shield or barrier, which we will have all the time, skill damage +12%, and every 10% shield/barrier damage value provides is an additional 1% skill damage up to an additional 14%. I believe 200k HP is what's necessary to get the most value out of this, and we're already above that. So this is pretty solid for us as well. That means guaranteed, so that means 12% skill damage, and then a guaranteed extra 14% on top of that as well. As you see, we're getting a lot of skill damage in this build. 5-piece set bonus. Gives us 6% increased critical damage, and then Blasting Thrust. Casting Crushing Blow, Earthquake, Full Channel Berserk Blade, Annihilation, or Condemnation Siphon triggers a ground explosion. Now you'll notice something about this. This is all of the skills we actually use in our current build. Crushing Blow, Earthquake, Full Channel Berserk Blade, Annihilation, and Condemnation Siphon. As long as these skills are channeled or cast on the ground, this procs. Now, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. That Earthquake sucks. It does so little damage. It's basically an extra chunk of damage that's added in. And if you're ever curious about it, you can go over to the training area and test it out yourself. It's buns. It also doesn't even get calculated correctly, so it's really, really annoying on how it actually works. But it does increase your damage, so it is worth mentioning as far as how this process goes. By how much, I really can't give you an exact number, but what you'll find after we go through some of the other stuff is that a lot of people are still using these. And you can take a look at each individual piece. As you can see, like I mentioned, you get 2 things. So in the case of the chest piece, you're getting Army Breaker has an extra 20% physical pen on targets. And I think it's also the damage during resonance +2.2%. These ones above here are kind of like just standard stats, these are the kind of 2 extra things that you get. So chest piece, not bad. Gloves, I believe, were okay-ish. Yeah, you get Berserk Blade of Annihilation plus level 1 or plus 1 level, and then Resonance Recharge plus 3.3%. Not really all that fantastic, but it's something. Going over to the pants, I believe the pants were kind of one of the better or worse, one of the worst ones. Berserker gets Savage Fury after dealing 5 hits of damage, which you're going to deal 5 hits of damage with your Savage Fury. You gain 40 attack speed for 10 seconds, which to me would never really seemed all that much. And then of course damage during resonance plus 2.2%. There's a lot you get for resonance on Berserker because you build your resonance very quickly, so you get a lot of damage in resonance. That's something that you're going to see pop up quite a bit. And then you can kind of go through each piece individually and kind of see more about each single individual piece, so on and so forth, right? But we do need to talk about 2 primary things. First is going to be our accessories. So as you can see, we got some new accessories. Right now, we're using the Landbound set. Landbound set, and the way it actually works is complicated. No, actually, I'm not gonna say complicated. It doesn't really make all that much sense when you watch how it procs versus how it actually deals damage. So I feel like the visual proc for this doesn't actually work alongside of how it actually deals damage and how it's calculated. And the reason I say that is because I've tried, testing this by calculating the damage in the actual training area, and it is, it's so freaking weird, man. It's so weird. But anyway, what our necklace does is it gives us Resonance Recharge, and then Army Breaker gets plus 15% and provides 50% damage resistance after casting. So pretty nice for Army Breaker. You'll love to see it, but we're looking primarily at the set bonus. So 2B set bonus, Surging Madness. When below max HP, it generates Surging Madness every 5 seconds. So whenever we're just below our max, or whenever we attack, use a skill of any type, we start generating Surging Madness every 5 seconds, dealing 50% of physical damage to enemies. It says every 5 seconds, right? Yeah, that's the pulse that happens around you. Damage isn't calculated that way. It's very strange. And then for every 10k missing HP, Surging Madness deals an additional 40% physical damage up to 800%. I'm going to tell you this now. Surging Madness is our biggest damage in our actual rotation. It's just our accessories. They do the most damage for us, and it's really, really funny. It's just something that you don't even do. It just radiates around you for damage. If you ever go into the testing area with this and you look at how much damage you actually deal and it shows like your breakdown, the thing you're gonna see at the very, very top is Surging Madness. Or I think it's the Landbound set specifically is what you see. And it's just funny every single time. And you can't turn it off. You can't stop it, by the way. Healing, nothing stops us. So if you're doing Queen and you happen to get selected to go inside of the, I can't remember what it's called, but go inside the space where you need to take down the chess pieces that that match up with the enemies on the outside, then you have to kind of be really careful because your Surging Madness can just proc and blow up, and if you hit the wrong chess pieces, you get knocked back and stunned, and it's really, really funny. You'll find if you ever watch me live, I usually run into a corner or away from everything until I figure out exactly what the piece I need to go towards is, and then I run for it immediately and pray to God that Landbound doesn't hit something it's not supposed to. But it's really funny to watch. And then 3-piece sect Conquest. Each time Berserker deals damage to an enemy with Surging Madness, the next instance of Surging Madness damage is increased by 20% up to 100%. This is just as long as you're close to enemies every 5 seconds, you can deal up to 100% damage with Surging Madness. And then there's a 5-piece set bonus. The reason why we're talking about the 5-piece set bonus is because we did come out with a piece of content that allows you to get the upgrades for the actual accessories, so you can get your 5-piece set bonus now. But 5-piece skill effect, or 5-piece set bonus. Skill damage increase plus 7%, and then Crimson Spirit. When Surging Madness hits at least one enemy, damage increases by 12%. So this is just a free 12% damage increase because you're going to hit an enemy with Surging Madness at least once every 5 seconds. You have a chance to hit an enemy with Surging Madness, so you will definitely hit enemies pretty consistently and just get a free damage bonus, which is pretty nice to have. Now, what you are going to find is our accessories are kind of balls. Like the necklace is okay, the bracer is okay. If we look at the bracer is okay. So Berserker gives a Combination Siphon, deals 30% damage against shield broken enemies, which means Combination Siphon becomes one of our biggest hitting damage dealers whenever an enemy is shield broken. So it's really, really nice to have. And then the ring, of course, we talked about earlier, which gives us Pyro Enhancement and gives us damage to Blade of Annihilation, which we really like a whole lot. You take those 3 pieces of gear, no matter what the situation is. Now we're going to talk about the other 2 because technically up until recently, this was done very, very differently. So I'm going to talk about them and I'm going to tell you what people are doing now versus what they were doing beforehand. And you can kind of decide what you want to do based on where you are currently in your leveling process. So fun fact, up until the most recent piece of content came out, a lot of top end Berserkers didn't take the actual Earth Drake seal. and they didn't take the Earthdrake or the Earthdrake mirror, right? Because you didn't have the upgrade to go to Landbound to get the set bonus, so you just were taking the stats from this individual piece of gear. And what it actually gave you is we got skill damage, physical pen, physical attack nullification. We got damage during resonance plus 5%, and health destruction got a 10% cooldown reduction. So health destruction is okay. It's pretty good on damage, but it wasn't like the end of the world for us. So funny enough, what a lot of Berserkers did was they actually were using either the Gunner, Sunlight Seal, which gives cooldown and physical pen and crit damage, which is like it just better overall statted. Or in some cases, I was seeing a lot of Berserkers. I say a lot, but some of the top end Berserkers, I saw them using Starbreaker. Starbreaker everything basically, because Starbreaker had pyro enhancement, which if you don't have enough pyro enhancement, which getting a decent amount of pyro enhancement, I believe it's like 20 or 270, maybe it's like 150 actually. I'll check the pinned comment. I'll get an answer for you guys and I'll mention in the pinned comment or whatever. But I feel like it's like 150-ish, something along those lines, that you are trying to go for a good amount of pyro enhancement. But when you reach that actual tip top amount of pyro enhancement, getting more is going to be kind of a detriment to you overall. So it's one of those situations where you get enough of it and it's useful. But if you can get more, it's actually really beneficial if you don't have, you know, the soft cap amount of the pyro enhancement. But basically these were just statted better. Like the reality is that they just had better statted versions of these. Like you see pyro enhancement, shield break efficiency is kind of lame, honestly, on the talisman. But the talismans aren't really all that great to begin with. It was the talisman and seal, and it was really funny to watch. Now it gets even funnier than talisman and seal situations. So we're going to talk about the hex chest gear and what some people were doing for a little while that I actually saw, and what made kind of sense here. For a short period of time, I wouldn't say short period, but a decent period of time, people were running 3 pieces of hex chest gear, which I guess I should explain hex chest gear before we go too far into it. But they're running 3-piece hex chest gear, not right at the moment, but they were. And the way hex chest gear works out is you essentially make this Valiant Guards helmet. You can upgrade it with these blueprints that you get as a chance drop. You get pieces of them as a chance drop from raid content. You put them together, and then you use that plus these jet black sculptures to create the actual piece you're going after. In this case, let's say the Chariot helmet, which in case you're like trying to get speed run through this, you definitely want to make the Chariot helmet. So you can see the Chariot helmet's giving us crit damage, physical attack, or damage bonus, nullification. It also gives magic attack because of course magic classes can use this as well. You get shield break efficiency up, and then you get the skill called Chariot's Banner. After casting a finisher, gain Chariot's Banner, increasing skill damage by 12% for 8 seconds. The effect expires after gaining Chariot's Banner mark. After the effect expires, gain Chariot's Banner mark until the next Chariot Banner is granted. Basically, this just sets you up in a way that you aren't able to like weirdly triple stack things or anything along those lines. It just makes it so you only are able to get the bonus when you're supposed to be able to get it. Now, you're probably thinking, why would you pick up these pieces of gear? Well, if you look at compatible activation, people still correct me to this day in comments of videos, and I want to explain this because it shows it quite literally in game for you guys. You don't have to, there's no guesswork here in this situation. Hex chest co-op dungeon armor, Valiant Cavalry Chariot and Unforgiving series, which is this, and this. So those 4 pieces here, I think I said it 5 times, but whatever, can also be used to activate level 60 class exclusive set effects. Great. I feel like this is where people stop reading. But 2 pieces of class exclusive set effects cannot be activated this way. You can't use 2 pieces of this to activate the set bonus of your class. Additionally, if fewer than 3 pieces of gear from the class exclusive set are equipped, the 4 and 5 piece set effects will also not activate. So what does that mean? That means if you only have 2 pieces of your class specific gear on, the 4 piece and the 5 piece will not work by using 3 pieces of, let's say Chariot gear. You can't use 3 pieces of Chariot and 2 pieces of your class specific gear and get this full set bonus from both of them. It does not work because of the way they explain it right literally right here for you. You have to at least have 3 pieces equipped to be able to get the benefit of 4-piece and 5-piece sets. That's already confirmed. You can take a look at the other players who already have their 3-piece sets going. It will show you. If the set's not lit up, it's not active. So it's really easy to tell. If this isn't lit up here, that means it's not active. You can look at other players to see the same thing, and we'll take a look at them here in just a moment. So what were people doing? So funny, there was a funny build I was seeing happen quite a few times where you were going 3 pieces of Chariot, because what this does, you do the 3-piece set bonus is you get a bunch of stats, and the duration of all Chariot effects is increased to 12 seconds. And then 3 different Chariot effects, which is 3 pieces of gear, or marks are active, so chariot effects or marks are active simultaneously, all chariot effects and marks merge into Mournful Strike and Rageful Awakening. Mournful Strike increases the next skill damage multiplier to 125%. Effect lasts for 15 seconds or until a skill is used, and then Rageful Awakening. Crit rate is increased by 25% and crit damage is increased by 50%, and convert any crit rate exceeding 100% into crit damage at a 1-to-1 ratio, taking only the higher value between physical and magical or magic with a maximum conversion of 25%. Physical and magic pen is increased by 10%. Damage to bosses is increased by 10%, lasting for 15 seconds, and you cannot gain chariot effect again for 24 seconds after the effect ends. So this becomes a 24-second downtime for the window that's up for 12 seconds. What it does is it gives you a bunch of, you get a bunch of stat, you increase all of the damage. After you get all three of those effects off, they combine into Mournful Strike and Mournful, what is it? It's, and Rageful Awakening, that's it. Mournful Strike just means your next big skill does a bunch of damage. Rageful Awakening gives you a bunch of crit rate and crit damage, and you have 1-to-1 ratio of your crit rate transferring over to your crit damage up to 25%. Now, this sounds crazy, and you're like, why would you not stack crit rate? Because what you'll find is in this game, most sources that give you crit rate versus crit damage, you will gain more crit damage than crit rate. So you don't just stack crit rate, you get crit rate to up 100%, or as close to it as you can get, and then you stack crit damage. And if you happen to get extra effects or skills that give you more crit rate, that is okay, because then in that situation, it will be transferred over to your crit damage. Makes sense, right? So this sounds really crazy powerful. What are you talking about? What are the builds that people are using? So I've seen two specific setups, and I'm told one of them is just the best in slot setup currently because of the way that all the skills are currently working at the moment. Now, again, take it with a grain of salt. I personally do not have these pieces of gear, nor can I take them anywhere and show them to you guys and test them. Unfortunately, I don't have access to the creator test server. So yeah, hopefully we can get access to creator stuff or anything along those lines. If you're trying to help out your boy, share the video around. Toss a comment on there, like it. Helps the YouTube algorithm. Anyway, what is the build that people are using? So 3-piece chariot. So I've seen its helmet, chest piece, and gloves. I wasn't a big believer in these, but I've seen this pretty consistently. And here was the funny part. They were using the pants from Starbreaker. And the reason for it is because the Berserker set 2-piece is not really all that good comparatively to the Starbreaker 2-piece. And as you find out, like I mentioned beforehand, I'm on a Berserker right now. Anything lit up is active. So all of these skills you still get. There's crit damage, skill damage, and what you'll find is as you start getting closer to endgame and start building your character up, you start to lose stats you can scale damage out of. You start hitting soft caps, and there's really no soft cap for critical damage. That's just going to scale damage up more or less infinitely to a degree. It's not exactly how the math works. I know there's someone out there where like actually, and they push their glasses up. Listen, I understand, I get it, but for the ease of use and understanding, this is going to be primarily the way you'll scale your damage up moving forward. So you'll look for ways of getting more crit damage without losing any of the other stats that you have. And the funny thing is that the 2-piece set bonus for Starbreaker, for every 20% crit rate, increases your crit damage by 5% up to 25%, is just more crit damage. And you are going to have a good amount of crit rate, and having at least 80% crit rate is already going to give you that extra, 20% crit damage. So it's solid. It's very, very good. And you found that, I think there are some still that do this to this day. I'm actually going to take a look really quick here. If we take a look at rankings, we go to, let's see, they might have changed them up. It might be, Golden Fleece is only on our server. I want to say it was on all servers. There we go. So I think Lamar changed. No, Lamar is actually, so Lamar is one of the highest ranked Berserkers, and he's the one who has this build going right now. As you can see, it's 3-piece of chariot, and then 2-piece of Starbreaker. And then they still have the Starbreaker, what is this? The steel, right? Because the steel is just overall better. Now, at the moment, since we can get the upgrades for this, you're going to start to find that people are starting to transition back to their proper class setup. I've heard this is very common for some classes. Apparently, there's some crazy 3-piece cavalry, 2-piece, what is it called? Warlock set that Magiblade's using right now, and they're going Umbral, which is just really funny to me. I'm not sure if that's actually, let me even look. I haven't even looked really quick. Let me see if that's happening right now. Yeah, there it is. 3-piece cavalry, 2-piece Umbral, and I'm assuming he's fully, yep, 190 Umbral. So that is so weird to me, man. That is insane. But yeah, so it's something that's starting to happen more and more often. But you'll start to see that there's some classes that their sets just aren't super amazing. You're probably thinking, but like Magiblade has cooldown reduction On his set, you can get that in the helmet, dude. Like, it's not that big a deal. But in the case of Berserker, what's the other build that people are using that's actually supposed to be pretty good? Now, I haven't seen this person's damage. I haven't seen exactly what they're capable of. This is very common. But what I'm starting to see happen a lot, at least in the damage rankings for Abyssal Frontier, which isn't like the best way to tell damage. I know it's different for every single class, but what you start to see is setups like this, where they're actually running the Chariot helmet, which is really, really powerful. It gives you, like, you know, that damage boost, that damage window. And actually the cavalry boots, which gives you just a chunk of movement speed that also gives you damage that you just have access to most of the time. Because of every 10% increased movement speed is like by 1% increased damage up to 13%. This is giving you a chunk of movement speed whenever you use a skill. So you're actually able to move around quite a bit and actually get quite a bit of damage out as well. And then you also have food that will increase your movement speed. So this is just really solid overall. And I'm starting to see this happen more and more. Like the top Berserkers on our server at the very least are starting to use it. I don't know if this Berserker is also here. Yep, oh no, he hasn't moved this over. So he's 2-piece Chariot. That's weird. He's 2-piece. He's 2-piece Cavalry, 3-piece Chariot. Like I said, weird things happen with certain builds, man. People will do some weird stuff. Like this Berserker's doing the same thing. I don't know what this Berserker's doing. I have no idea. This is 3-piece Chariot and 2 pieces of Unforgiven, I believe. Yeah, they might be a bit more support coded maybe for their team. I have no clue, man. Like there's some very strange setups that I have seen multiple times, but pretty tried and true, at least what I've seen so far that I've seen do well, is going to be 3 of your actual, like, you know, your base class specific gear with the cavalry boots and with the Chariot helmet. Now, I would take this with a grain of salt. Like I said, things have evolved and changed. Things will continue to evolve and change. I could see a situation where 3-piece Chariot just ends up being the better choice. But the thing is that it's really, really punishing when you don't get it right. And from what I understand, this is like as much damage basically without being as punishing. So it's just kind of the better choice to go after. Also, funny enough, you can see there's a different seal slot, but as you can see, they're starting to transition back over. So it looks like they were able to get their landbound mirror. When you get landbound of the next piece, I'm sure they're going to go ahead and get that taken care of, and they're going to switch over to that as well to get their 5-piece set bonus and be good to go. That is a guess. I don't know the guarantee if that's the case, but that's where I'm guessing that's going to go. And of course, for the weapon, I've heard people ask me this multiple times as far as what weapon should you build. I feel like, you know, it's pretty straightforward and pretty honest. You're just building the dragon weapon. Let me just go here so it's easier for you to see. You're building the Claymore of the Mad Dragon. That's what you want to go for, and you're upgrading the Claymore of the Mad Dragon all the way through. If you happen to get a ship cleaver first, just use it. Use it, upgrade it, it's fine. Do not upgrade it to the Blaze Moon. Keep going after your Claymore of the Mad Dragon. Just make it the last thing you go after. You can upgrade this thing like your actual enhancements. You can keep pushing it up higher and higher and higher, but don't upgrade to here, because once you enhance it to level 60 weapon, it can't be, you know, merged into a level 55 weapon. You'd have to upgrade this thing to level 60 to then be ahead and move the enhancements over. So just make sure it's okay to use this, but you want to go for Claymore of the Mad Dragon. That's the better one to go for now. And I believe also the level 70 patch. So just keep that in mind when it comes down to gear. So next we're going to talk about circuits. Circuits is a very interesting topic because circuits are kind of a pain in the ass, while also kind of being where you can do your fine tuning in your build. So the way circuits work, if you've ever played any gachas beforehand, it's essentially a small piece of gear that you can upgrade. It has locked stats, and as you upgrade, it unlocks those stats. And then after you've unlocked all the stats, which are the first 8 levels, you can then have a chance to roll into those stats to increase them. So you've got, let's say, for example, I have this Epic Radiant Circuit. It is just attack. When I first get it, it's going to have none of these substats. But as I level this thing up to 8, every 2 levels, I unlock one of the substats. And then after I level it to 8, when I level it higher to 20, of course, my main stats are going to increase, but it's going to then roll into each one of these stats again each time, increasing that stat specifically. So what you'll end up finding is that you want to try to fine tune your build a bit, see if you can get some of the stats you're looking for, things like Pyro Enhancement, which can be very, very helpful for you. If you have enough crit rate, but you don't have enough crit damage, things like crit damage, which you can get here. As far as what you can roll in each individual slot here and how this actually works is you have crit rate, crit damage, attack speed, and cooldown, I believe, all can be rolled for the helmet, the gloves, and the boots. The chest piece can only roll HP, so you can only get these circuits here. They'll give you base HP, not the substats, of course. Substats can roll anything of these. To my knowledge, I believe if you have a crit rate or if you have a crit damage piece, it cannot roll crit damage down here. I have been told that crit rate works the same way. I can't confirm that for you specifically because I haven't had that happen to me. But technically, crit rate when it rolls in the substat area, it rolls as physical crit rate or as magical crit rate. So if that is correct, then if you have a crit rate one, you're only looking for crit damage and then other stats. If you have a crit damage one, you're only looking for crit rate and other stats. Just keep that in mind as you're going through this. If you're curious of how you should upgrade your circuits, upgrade them to 8. Look for 3 offensive stats, bare minimum. I say offensive stats, remember we went over attributes early on in the video. You're looking for 3 of those that we talked about that were offensive for you, and then to level them to 20. Do that and get yourself a full set first before you start optimizing and tweaking where things can be better and worse. Because what you'll find is that circuits are something you're going to roll for a very, very, very long time. It's going to be really difficult to get a really, really good set of circuits because it is purely RNG based. And we're finding that there's not a lot of places to get extra circuits in the game at the moment. So just go ahead and roll. Hopefully you get lucky and you get what you're looking for. In the seal and talisman slots, I believe it's basic attack, skill damage, and then elemental damage. Ideally for Berserker, you're looking for elemental damage. I didn't mention this here, but like for crit rate, you're looking for crit rate or crit damage in either the helmet, gloves, or boots, unless you just happen to have like some crazy good circuits that you can start looking at things like cooldown if you really need to, or or skill damage. Basic attack damage is like the lowest of the low of all of those, so just keep that in mind. For the circuits and the but the accessory and the weapon, it's always going to be based on attack. You didn't really do anything about it, so you're just looking for your substats for all of them all the way down until you hit, of course, the actual seal and the talismans. So that's pretty much it when it comes to circuits. It's just RNG. You roll, hopefully you get lucky, you do the best you absolutely can. So I'm going to briefly touch on outfits really quick here because there are a couple of things that can be very helpful and very beneficial for you. I know some people aren't a huge fan of this sort of thing. They're like, oh, pay to win, so on and so forth when it comes down to it. But to be honest, if you're smart about your expenditures on Crystal of Atlan, you can be like me and you get all of these outfits that you have here, all of the S rank and triple S rank and fully statted out insignias completely for free. The reason you do that is you can sell your unbound gold for currency you can use to roll. And as long as you're playing consistently, you're keeping up with your wondrous sales or your wondrous shops and purchasing out the discounted brocades as well as the pet summons, that you can eventually get everything that you absolutely need, like I have here. So it's something I did pretty easily, to be perfectly honest, without having to spend any extra money. Have I spent extra money in the game? Yes. On this, no, didn't need to. But yes, you want to go ahead and get yourself an outfit, and then you actually have the ability to put in insignias in these outfits to increase a specific skill. In this case, we're going with Condemnation Siphon. It just seems to be one of the better skills to go for, at least that I have found. I think the only other one I've seen mixed in is Army Breaker, and that's pretty much it. Actually, is it Army Breaker? I want to say it's Army Breaker that was mixed in as well. It was either Army Breaker or it was, hold that thought. Yeah, okay, I was right. It is either Berserk Siphon or was it either Condemnation Siphon or Army Breaker? And I'm finding out after doing another look, because of course there has to be some changes. I'm finding more people are actually putting a lot more, what is it, Army Breaker? I think it's in here. A lot more Army Breaker than Condemnation Siphon now. I don't know if that's something that's been found out or whatever it happens to be, but just keep that in mind that I'm seeing a lot more of that now than I have seen in the past. So it's one of those two, maybe balance out. You're probably thinking, well, how do I get those insignias, so on and so forth. Remember earlier how I said you can do a bunch of pulls, get your full outfits, where you're going to get these pity items that you can get from that. That's not the right place. And I believe it is in summon and maybe item. Yes, item. So you're going to get these pity items that you can get. It's going to cost you this currency, essence of brocades. I would just save up your brocades and then purchase the exact insignia that you actually need instead of going the RNG route. You can go the RNG route, it's a bit cheaper, but like it's still 3 insignias in that situation. I would highly recommend just saving up your currency, purchasing out the 6 bags you need, and then get the exact insignias you're looking for instead of dealing with RNG ones. As you can see, we have them for Savage Fury, Condemnation Siphon, Earthquake, Annihilation, Crimson Cross, and then of course Army Breaker. So Army Breaker seems to be one of the more popular ones to go after right now. Condemnation Siphon was up on that list as well, so take it with a grain of salt. You should be perfectly fine. And to wrap things up, we're going to talk about insignias. Now, insignias are a fun conversation because it's going to depend on what you have access to. Now, I have seen a shift back and forth, and now we're back again. So just, again, take this with a giant grain of salt. Make sure you are prepared regardless of the situation. So ideally, you would get one of your elemental insignias. In this case, since we're Berserker, we would go for the Crag insignia, which would give us Pyro attack and then Pyro enhancement. And then you would keep that one and then pick up our Bena insignias, which you'd go for 3 to give you physical attack plus 10%. I'm now seeing that most Zerkers, at least the top end ones, are back to the Crag Insignia maxed out. Now this might be due to the fact that we have some new gear that's actually increasing some of our elemental enhancements, and we're moving into some content that might help out in that situation, or it could have just been a shift in meta, realistically speaking. I can't tell you for sure. Again, testing is not the easiest thing to do at the moment. The best thing I can do is tell you kind of how things work, and then what most people are doing. That way you can go ahead and compare it to what you want to do on your end. But I would be prepared to either be running Crag or running Barbena. I'm probably just going to stick to Crag to make life easy, just because it seems to be what people are shifting over to, unless, of course, something else changes again in the near future. But we do go Pyro if we're going for an element, regardless of the situation itself. Moving on, I believe, where's the next one we have to talk about? We have Blade Matron. Blade Matron is either chest piece or shoes. If there is any slot we're going to recommend even going for with the Blade Matron, it's going to be shoes, not chest piece. We'll talk about why, because it's another option basically with another insignia. But shoes, if anything, and the reason for it is because of the base HP, skill, and basic attack damage. At max, it's 7%. Technically, you can get more with something else, but it's going to be a question of, are you reaching a new breakpoint with your HP to be able to make up for that 1% damage? That's actually going to help you out quite a bit in this situation. So skill damage is only 7%, base attack damage is 7%. There's going to be an option for something else, but again, it depends very highly on that HP breakpoint. Most people opt to not even worry about it and go with the other option. Hex Chest Guard. This is a good slot, I believe, for your gloves and helmet, but we will double check that. But essentially, it's going to give you crit damage. Like I mentioned beforehand, in situations where you have crit rate and crit damage, you will get a chunk of crit rate, but you tend to get more overall stat by going the route of crit damage and then taking the extra crit rate you get in the situation. I believe the crit damage, the crit rate situation is like 10% or something like that. Leotids, for us, don't care. Not something we're going to be using. It's for breastplate and gloves, not using it in the slightest. Ophelia, breastplate and gloves, again, not something that I think we're actually using. I say I think, I shudder. I'm pretty sure this isn't going to be something that's better than what we have access to, which is, of course, we have the hex chest for the gloves. But the chest piece is going to be something else as well. We have Polonaise. This is going to be the crit rate option for the gloves, if you really need the crit rate, I guess. But I would argue that taking the crit damage with a bit of crit rate is still going to be your better overall choice, as you still get 4% crit damage. So still pretty, or crit rate with the 10% crit damage, which is still pretty solid. Claudius. Claudius is going to eat up our helmet and our breastplate slots. So the reason I mentioned that we had better options is basically Claudius. This is going to give us 20% crit damage. Like I mentioned earlier on, you're going to start to get to a point where you can only scale crit damage up pretty extensively. So you're going to use Claudius. Claudius is really, really strong. Meridia is no. It's just no. I mean, no, not really, not true. Okay, I want to say no because I'm a big believer in the Blade Matron, but the reality is that this is probably going to be a better choice for your shoes when it comes to the insignia, because it's just 8% bonus damage as opposed to relying on reaching a break point and also it being skill and basic attack. So it's probably going to be the better choice for the shoes, more or less. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I haven't looked at the new insignias. We're gonna take a look at them and let you know if they're actually useful for Berserker or not. We have a new helmet in seal, interesting. So probably gonna be a good seal, because I believe we were using a pink insignia before this. So it's probably gonna be the next best seal insignia. On attribute plus 16% and then damage to bosses plus 4%. This is going to be the shoe and talisman slots. This is all attribute enhancement and damage to be buffed by 4%. Don't think this beats shoes. And in talisman, I believe we have a better talisman slot, so we'll have to double check. It might be okay in the talisman slot, but we'll have to double check that one as well. And then there is Azrael. This is seal talisman, 8% damage bosses. Ooh, that might actually be really good, but we'll double check it as we're going down. The pink insignias are pretty much our only option that can replace anything else, but that does sound pretty solid overall. Golem insignia, no. Crystalline beast insignia, breastplate, no. Talisman, okay. Vilk is a solid insignia kind of as a stopgap for gloves and bracers until we get something better. I believe this actually is the better choice for bracers in general. No. There's options better than this. This is a decent stopgap if you need the elemental enhancement. Gramos. So this is going to be the pants slot for us because there is no gold pants insignia. And this was the best choice for the seal insignia. As you can see, it's 4% damage to bonus to bosses. Sorry, 4% damage bonus in general and all class skills. So if we look at some of the early insignia, so we have 4% bonus damage. And this is our seal slot. We can look for another seal. This was 4% damage to bosses and it gives us attribute enhancement. So, I mean, technically, this is better because the attribute enhancement. If you don't need the attribute enhancement, I would just go with Gramos just for ease of use, plus 1 point extra to the active skills between 25 to 35, which I believe is part of combination siphon and possibly army breaker. Don't remember off the top of my head, but still pretty solid. But in the pants, no brainer, you're going to Gramos. Andre is a helmet and ring slot. This is going to be all attribute enhancement. It's solid. Again, attribute enhancement's good if we need it. Joker's insignia is Umbral. We don't need Umbral. We have Clockwork Warden, which is going to give us some crit rate. If we need the crit rate, it's okay. But realistically speaking, in most situations, we're not going to go for this insignia here in this situation. We're going to go for the Thunderbolt, which is crit damage for the necklace and bracers. Honestly, better choice in my opinion. We also have the Kranos insignia. This is going to be helmet and ring. This is a good stopgap choice. It's just a bunch of Bane stats. So if you don't have something better in that slot, this is actually pretty decent to use. We also have Ancient Guardian Fist. No, Cryo. Not really worried about it. This is also not for us. This is Magiblade. For its attack speed and cooldown. Not really worried about it. We have the Sawblade Mech Insignia. This is basic attack. We have a version of this that is still better. This is basically the base attack version of Gramos, so we don't really want to go for this one. We have the Tower Shield. This is Breastplate and Talisman. So this was, I believe, our previous best Talisman slot that we had. I'd argue that this might actually be better. Damage to bosses is 8% is pretty big, though this is just skill damage by 5%. So it's up to you kind of how you optimize for this. I believe there's another insignia option. Talisman. Yeah, I mean, damage to debuff by 4% versus 5% skill damage. You know, the all attribute enhancement's kind of carrying this quite a bit. So it's kind of a tough call. I probably would stick around with this until I knew for certain, but they are some pretty solid choices overall between some of these different insignias. As you can see, some have benefits versus others. But as far as Berserker goes, it's useful. Oh, we don't need Electric Whip. Not really good. Right, yes. Yeah, damage vulnerable, okay. Heavy Mech is a good stopgap for your weapon insignia if you need it, but in most situations you're going to be running, of course, your proper elemental insignia, so no. Dark Flame is breastplate pants. We're not, I mean, we have better pants insignias and we're not replacing the breastplate, but I guess if you have nothing else, I mean, it's base HP, I still wouldn't do it. We have Thunderous Thrash 3. In this case, it's helmet and shoes. TLDR, no. Void Ring. In this case, necklace and ring, no. Chaos Breaker, gloves, bracers, no. And then this is the weapon for the 10% crit damage. You get this from the resources pack. So this is probably what you'll be using until you actually get a hold of one of these if you happen to purchase that resources pack. And that's pretty much it when it comes to the insignias. The rest is just lower versions of some of the pink insignias, and of course, slot in what you can. And then of course, there's these bottom insignias that are available for outfits and things of that sort. So also, I didn't mention it in the other portion of, but the outfit insignias as well as the title insignias are all really, really good. You can get them and level them up, absolutely do so. At the very least, get the base versions of them and get them slotted in. And if you get the higher level versions of them, if you can, as you save up, of course, your summons, so on and so forth. That's basically going to be it. I think that covers pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. We covered insignias, we covered gear, we covered skills, we covered attributes. We even talked about looking at some of the high-end character or high-end players and some of the crazy builds that they're actually going for. So if there is anything I missed, oh, you know what? We do have to talk about it. So there's a 1 layer extra of gearing in this game now, and it's called cards. The way cards work is you collect them and you activate effects based on the cards you have. If you have all of a specific rarity, you activate that effect. And when you have higher or more of those cards, you get higher levels of those effects. Now, there are more effects, as you can see here. If we, let's say, go to, what was the really good card? There was one that was really good. I want to say, Park Guardian wasn't bad. So like, let's say we'll look at Park Guardian. Park Guardian, you have 4 blue cards and 2 purple cards. So as you see here, if you were to get all 4 of the blue cards, you would activate the skills here. And as this leveled up, you would then get better versions of these skills. If you got the 2 purple cards, you can see here, that would give us the purple card effect. And then of course you were able to go ahead and get a higher version of the effect if you actually have everything you need. But you of course need to have the prerequisite cards to be able to unlock that. And of course, after unlocking all the other attributes, then you can of course get the full effect from the actual cards themselves. As far as equipping cards, if we actually take a look at our gear, you can come over here to the deck and you have 3 slots to equip for your cards. You then equip those specific cards in those slots. I don't have any extra ones to go. Basically, like equipping those card sets in those slots to then get their effects. And of course, you want to use them. As far as what's good, just think of the same attributes that we talked about as we're going about this process. So of course your crit rate, your crit damage. Of course you don't want too much extra crit rate, but getting some extra crit rate is not the end of the world for you. If you're going to use the chariot set, of course, but if you're not, then you don't want to get any extra crit rate whatsoever. You want to go up to 100% and then no higher than that in that situation itself. And that's basically it. It's mostly self-explanatory, straightforward. It's an RNG mechanic, so you really can't plan for it or go towards it. It's just whatever you happen to unlock. And then you, of course, get the best gear you possibly can or the best effects you possibly can from that setup. And that does it. If there's anything I missed, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe when you keep up with more. By the time this video comes out, I will likely be live playing Assassin at that point. So if you want to go ahead and stop on by, I'd very much appreciate it. As always, thank you to the channel members. You guys are fantastic and I appreciate every single one of you. And I will see you all in the next video. Take care, my friends. And 07, my fellow Zerkers. Just know that there are buffs on the horizon as well as some really, really cool new skills. So I likely will come back and play more Berserker again. I've been waiting to play Spectre for a very long time, so I'm looking forward to it. Either way, friends, peace out.